Okay, and then I'm going to hide the meeting controls so there
Cool.
will be no black boxes. I'm gonna stop my video. Um, can you see any black boxes or anything?
No, it all looks perfect.
Great. Okay, well, we're recording, so
That's the easy solution all along. Okay. I'm gonna make sure I'm just gonna X out of anything I don't need, and then I will kick us off.
Yeah, I'm just doing the same.
Cool. Yeah, I think that
I
can make noise.
I've exited out of all of the speaker controls and everything. Do we need those back up so that we can see you when you're talking, do you think? Or
So whenever we recorded this once, I never saw myself on screen. I only saw Kathy. But then
okay.
whenever I looked at the recording, I was on it. So it's kind of nice to see like the view way. Can you do like to your views so that you can see the speakers on the right? Like it's nice when people can see our faces
Um,
in your like view settings.
yeah, I just got rid of you and now I don't know how to get you back.
So it should be in the drop down menu when you ho hover over the top.
Show meeting? No.
No, it'd be like in view.
Oh, I see it now.
Yeah, and
View.
if you pick like gallery or speaker,
Okay. What are you seeing now?
I just still see your screen because that's how, what the Zoom settings are. But it
Yeah,
matters.
same.
It matters what you can see because you're the one recording your meeting. So can you see me and Kathy or just me?
I can see both, but I think I've oh wait. Okay, now I see the person talking.
Okay, cool. So what I'm gonna do whenever I'm introducing this, obviously it's only gonna show Kathy on screen when you're speaking, Kathy. So I'm gonna whenever I'm saying I'm joined by I'm joined by my colleague Kathy. I'm just gonna you just come in and say hello. I'm Kathy. I'm a project worker. Da 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 da.
Perfect.
Okay. Get burps out. Okay. Test run. Okay. You're very welcome to this Consent Ed webinar for parents and caregivers. Today, we're going to be talking about online sexual harm and the steps that you can take to protect your child online. We're also going to be looking at some emerging risks and some of parents' biggest concerns around online safety. So my name is Alex Black, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Kathy.
Hey, I'm Kathy. I'm a project worker at the Consented Project. You're really
And
welcome today.
And I'm also a project worker at the Consent Ed Project. So, Consent Ed Project is a sexual violence prevention resource for young people in Ireland. We believe that the key to ending sexual violence is creating cultural change through education, and the earlier that happens, the better. The strategic partnerships behind the Consent Ed Project schools program are Galway Rape Crisis Centre and Cuan. And this resource for parents has been created in collaboration with the National Parents Council to support you in keeping your child safe online. So off we go.
So, one of the subjects that your child learns about online in school is I need to start that again. Fuck's sake.
Yeah, and that looks weird, Amy. It like, okay. We can probably stop recording and then start recording again because otherwise.
Okay, now let me put it back up. Let me hide my floating meeting controls. Okay,
Okay. And every time we pause, that means you have to change the slide.
yes, or give me really big eyes or something that makes it obvious that I'm okay.
Welcome to this Consent Ed webinar for parents and caregivers. Today, we're going to be talking about online sexual harm and the steps that you can take to protect your child online. We'll also look at some of the emerging risks and some of parents' biggest concerns around online safety. So my name is Alex Black and I'm joined by my colleague, Kathy.
Hey, I'm Kathy. I'm a project worker at the Consent Ed Project. I'm delighted to welcome you all here today.
And I'm also a project worker with the Consent Ed Project. So the Consent Ed Project is a sexual violence prevention resource for young people in Ireland. We believe that the key to ending sexual violence is to create cultural change through education, and the earlier that education happens, the better. The strategic partnerships behind the Consent Ed Schools programme are Galway Rape Crisis Centre and Cuan. This resource for parents has also been created in collaboration with the National Parents Council to support you in keeping your child safe online. So without further ado, off we go.
So, one of the subjects that your child learns about in school is social, personal, and health education, commonly known as SPHE. Currently, SPHE is a mandatory subject for junior cycle and will become a mandatory subject for senior cycle students by 2027. These classes cover a wide range of topics, and one of the topics that your child will learn about in this course is online sexual harm. Online sexual harm lessons inform young people about how to stay safe online, how to establish online boundaries, intimate image sharing and legislation, support services for victims of intimate image abuse. Although these topics are taught in school, a substantial amount of every child's learning about the online world takes place in real life and at home. And this is why it's essential for you to be informed as a parent so you can continue this learning at home and start these conversations. So you may be wondering, why do you need to talk to your child about online safety? A National Parents Council survey found that the top concerns of Irish parents included cyberbullying, spending too much time online,
So pause,
online grooming.
pause. Amy, you have to change the slide. So start that again. Start the why do I need to talk to my child about online safety again and take like a little bit of a gap, like pause for a few seconds and then start talking.
You
So
didn't
you
give
may
me
be
big
wondering,
eyes.
Well, I
Sorry.
was
why do you
doing
need to
this to
talk to
you.
my
You weren't speaking though, Alex, so I can't see you.
Oh yeah, true. Okay. You
Okay, sorry.
you're just gonna have to, yeah, I think we just pause. Just pause in between what you're saying so that Amy
Okay.
knows.
Because I kind of know, because I am paying attention, but I just don't really know when, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So just
Yeah,
give me
just
a,
Yeah,
honest,
okay.
just stop talking. It's not gonna be awkward. Just pause for a few seconds and then Amy will change the slide.
okay. Sorry, guys.
Okay. So we'll pause for a few seconds now.
So you may be wondering, why do I need to talk to my child about online safety? A National Parents Council survey found that the top concerns for Irish parents included cyberbullying, their children spending too much time online grooming and exploitation, and accessing inappropriate content. While undoubtedly there are valid concerns about children spending too much time online and accessing inappropriate content, along with communicating with people with intent to harm or exploit them, there is equally clear that the internet presents fantastic opportunities for children in terms of leisure, work, and connection. We don't intend for the overarching message of this webinar to be to keep our young people off the internet, but if in fact we did, we wouldn't be preparing them adequately for the digital world we live in and setting them up for life. Just like there were many other things, there are dangers that it is about educating young people is to educate them so that they can navigate the online world safely. If your child has been accessed a digital or online device, it's vital to talk to them about the online world and the harmful things they may encounter online. Even if they've been online for years, it's never too late to start a conversation. Open communication with your child can prevent them from engaging in risky behaviors online, such as sharing too much personal information or interacting with strangers. It also encourages them to disclose to you if they come across any harmful behavior or problems online, or see something that maybe upsets them or something that they feel a little bit uncomfortable about. They'll feel confident enough to come and have a conversation with you, to ask your advice, and to open up them channels of communication.
So, what exactly is online sexual harm then? So, online sexual harm is one of the most prevalent forms of sexual violence amongst young people due to the accessibility of internet and digital devices. So, some examples of this include intimate image sharing or nude sharing, grooming, sexual exploitation, so things like sextortion and child sexual abuse material. And we'll look into a lot of these terms later in more detail, so don't worry if you don't know them. Unwanted exposure to pornography, and then unwelcome sexual comments, messages, pictures, or other types of online sexual harassment. So when we think about the online world of children and young people, so much of our lives happen online, and young people are really used to the online world being very enmeshed in their day-to-day lives. So it's no longer a thing of, online versus the real world. It's kind of all the one thing for young people today because they've grown up entirely with the internet. And many young people feel pressure to be available 24/7 and have an active presence on all their social media apps. And it's very hard for young people to even picture a world without things like the internet banking, online shopping, messaging apps, or social media, not like us. And if we look at this picture of the phone that we have here on the screen, this kind of amount of engagement and notifications is quite a likely reality for young people. So along with these kind of constant notifications and constant kind of calls for connection or to engage with their phone, young people also feel a pressure to maybe have their location on or their like last active function available for their friends so their friends can see the last time that they were available online. And so while these features can be helpful, especially for parents to know their kid's location or when their kid was last online so that they know, that they were doing something online, these features can also add to the pressure to be for young people to be constantly available, and it can also then increase the risk that that young person could maybe be exposed to harm because someone might be using these functions for not the best intent. So while undoubtedly there are valid concerns about children and young people spending too much time online, accessing inappropriate content, communicating with people that who, don't know them or like have, would like to harm them or have malicious intent, as Kathy was saying, the internet presents really fantastic opportunities for this generation of young people. And to not have access to the internet would not be preparing them for the world that we now live in. So that's why we need to instill critical thinking skills, personal safety, awareness, and things like that for when they are navigating the online world. So when we think about the effects of online sexual harm, if a child or a young person or a teenager is exposed to some sort of harm or harassment online, it's very natural that they're going to be upset or confused or scared. And this experience could negatively impact their physical, emotional, and even sexual well-being. So online sexual harm and harassment can lead to social isolation. Victims might avoid social interactions or even like not want to go to school or something like that. And this can happen both online and offline. So it can impact them both in their online life and also in their school life, family life, hanging out with peers, all that kind of thing. So, how prevalent is online sexual harm in Ireland? Unfortunately, it is very prevalent. So, a report by the EU Commission in 2023 revealed that 11% of Irish people know of a child who's been the victim of online sexual abuse. So, this is typically in the form of being groomed online or having images or videos of their abuse shared or having nudes leaked of them. In addition, 10% of Irish respondents said that they had personally come across or been exposed to child sexual abuse material online. So that'll just show you how prevalent it is that you can come across it, even when that's the last thing you would ever be searching for.
So you may be wondering, how can you protect your young people online, and how can you, as a parent, have a role in what your young people are viewing? So we're going to examine now the role of parents and parental controls. So 90% of Irish adults acknowledge that there is increasing pressure on parents to ensure their children's safety online. However, just 20% agreed that parents in general are aware of what their children are doing online. This is where parental controls can support you. Parental control is a tool that can help parents manage what their children see and do online and who they engage with. They can block harmful websites, limit screen time, filter the content that your child sees, and monitor your child's activity. There's a wide range of different parental controls and options available to you, and dependent on your situation and what your need is. So, for example, on smartphones and tablets, there's built in settings like screen time on iPhones and digital well-being on Android. You can set screen time and block content. On computers, like tools like Microsoft Safety on Windows and parental controls on Mac are designed to manage internet access, website access, limit times, and app use. On Wi-Fi routers, some routers let you block certain windows or set time limits for specific devices connected to your network. And on streaming platforms that we all use, such as Netflix, YouTube, and Disney Plus, they have parental controls to restrict content by age rating.
You want to do that slide again? Sorry, just because you didn't pause and Amy hadn't swapped over to it.
Yeah, sorry, I
Okay,
got a little
sorry,
bit
Amy.
lost there. No, it's not your fault. I just got a bit
No
confused.
bother.
There are a wide range of different parental controls available to you depending on your situation and the age of your children. On smartphones and tablets, you can use built-in settings like screen time on iPhones or digital well-being on Android to limit apps, set screen time, and block content. On computers, you can use tools like Microsoft Safety and parental controls on Mac to manage website access, set times, and app use. On Wi-Fi routers, some routers offer you the option to block certain websites or set time limits for specific devices that are connected to your network. On streaming platforms that we're all familiar with, such as Netflix, YouTube, and Disney Plus, they have built-in parental controls to restrict content by age rating. Unfortunately, parental controls are not the perfect solution. 78% of Irish adults said that tools like parental controls were not sufficient enough to keep children safe online when using the internet. This is essential to use parental controls along with open communication with your child about the content that they're consuming online and the risks of the internet. Without these conversations, your child might feel like their privacy has been violated, they are overstepping the mark, which can lead to the lack of trust between you and your kids. Children are tech savvy and they will likely find ways to bypass these controls if they don't understand why they're needed. So that's why that conversational piece that we're going to talk about in a while is really, really important piece of the foundations of keeping your child safe online.
So in this section, we're going to look a bit more of the things to be aware of when it comes to social media apps and also online gaming in keeping your child safe and the parental controls that are available to you. So when we think about all the just different social media apps and websites that our kids could be looking at, it can be really easy to feel overwhelmed by just like the vastness of the internet and a young person's online world. And constantly there's all these new apps and games that it can feel really difficult to keep up with. But in reality, that there's only a limited number of functions that every site or app or game can have. So the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center recommends using this kind of simple technique of breaking down an app or a website into its key functions and then asking some simple questions in order to gain a better understanding of how the app or game works. So once you understand the functions, you only have to know what functions an app or website or game has in order to familiarize yourself with it and some of the risks that might be posed from it. So this will help you focus on the different kind of safety messages that you can give your child based on what they're using. So an app functions or website functions can be pretty much broken down into viewing, sharing, communication and chatting, friending and gaming. And some of the most common apps that young people are going to use with these functions are Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, Roblox, and YouTube. So no one app is the problem, no one type of app or no one type of website is the problem. Unhealthy behavior and online predators can have a presence on every platform. So that's why it's important for you to get familiar with the functions of the app or the website or the game that your child is using so that you can be aware of what to keep an eye on. So we'll look at viewing first. So viewing videos and content and stuff can be really fun and informative for young people. And a lot of it is, just fun, all good, clean fun or informative or, there's no risks posed. But because content can be shared publicly or privately on a range of these different platforms, it can unfortunately be very easy for children to come across inappropriate sexual or even violent content on video streaming platforms. Many apps and games, but not all of them, include privacy and security settings that allow you to control what content can be seen and shared. And a lot of apps do have a certain amount of filters in them based on age rating. You'll see this on things like TikTok or Instagram, where they're kind of amping up those controls more on their end. So in addition, tools such as parental controls and filters can help manage a child's online activities and what they're exposed to. However, these are never totally guaranteed. And as children get older, they may not want the filters and the parental controls to be used, or they might find ways around them. And as Kathy said, kids are very tech savvy and they will often catch on to things before you will. So it's important to keep yourself, up to speed with these things. So because of that, it's really vital to have an open and ongoing conversation with them about what they're seeing and make sure that they can talk to an adult and talk to you if they ever see something online that upsets them. So now we'll look at sharing. So a key part of education with young people is talking to them about what they're sharing online. Sharing pictures and videos can be really fun, can be, a creative outlet, it can help them express themselves. It can also just help them keep up with their friends and their family. But it's easy to share things online that we wouldn't necessarily share face to face. And it's important to talk to children about safe sharing online. So it's important that we explore even also the motivations to share online, like why do we want to share this photo? Why do we want to share this video? Why do we want to tweet this? An image or a video should never ever be shared because they felt pressured or uncomfortable or blackmailed or like someone was forcing them or pressuring them to share a certain photo with them. So we also want to encourage young people to look out for others by not sharing inappropriate content or harassment content or harmful content or hate speech or anything like that. Because there's that element of the internet where people kind of have that cognitive dissonance. So often they will say more extreme things or share more extreme things than that they would ever say in real life because it would be rude to do so. But the online world kind of it adds in that layer of separation where people aren't always stopping to think about what they're sharing online. So that's why they should look out for others by not sharing inappropriate content. But also when it comes to sharing videos and things like that, when it comes to being conscious, things like don't share photos in your school uniform, like some very basic safety information and tips that you can give your kid of like, don't share personal details, don't share photos in your school uniform, don't share photos of like with our address in them or something like that. Just these very basic things that can help them keep themselves safe when they are sharing stuff online. So then there's chatting, following, and friending. So we all use apps to stay in contact with our friends and our loved ones and our family, and instant messaging has really become the norm. Often people use it in place of texting. I know I do. So chatting and meeting new people on the internet can be really fun and can be really appealing for young people. There's lots of online apps and communities that can be very educational and supportive for them. However, the whole idea of chatting and following and friending people that you don't know online opens up opportunities for adults to contact them online. And, most people that they talk to online are not going to pose a huge risk to them. But the problem is you don't always know who poses a risk and who doesn't. And sometimes adults can pose as young people online to try and gain access to young people and talk to them and build a relationship with them. And we'll talk about that a little more in a while around grooming. So no matter how old your child is, it's very important to talk to them about the people who contact them online. Some people might genuinely just want to chat or be friends, but others might want to put pressure on them or manipulate them into doing something that they're not comfortable with. And it's very important to speak to your child openly and honestly about this in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're to blame or that they're wrong for making friends online, because you want them to feel like it's always safe for them to come to you without getting in trouble. So young people should always be advised not to share too much personal information. A common tactic used by predators, as you're saying, to contact children is to create a fake profile, posing as a young person or befriending everyone in their friend group or in their school group so that that young person then kind of thinks like, oh, well, I probably know them. It's probably a mutual friend, when in fact it's not. And it's not that difficult to find a whole class group or a whole friend group online. So that's why your young person has to be kind of very aware and very savvy and quite cynical about just the randomers that are trying to contact them online. And the golden rule is to never accept someone you don't know. And young people should only friend or talk to people that they know and trust, ideally. And sometimes children might, as we said, find it difficult to tell you something's worrying them or something feels wrong online, especially if they were the one to create the friendship first or reach out to this person first or initiate the contact. So they might feel like they're responsible or that they brought this on themselves. Or they might feel like they're going to get in trouble with you for talking to strangers online. So it's really important to instill that all these conversations that you're going to have with them are about their safety. It's not about punishing them. It's not about them getting into trouble. It's about you supporting them to keep themselves safe. So ask things like, who are you friends with online? What are you like? What do you have in common? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you share with each other? Like, what do you know about this person? And that'll help you kind of tease out the kind of relationships that they have. So then we'll look at gaming. So online gaming has become way more prevalent in the last even like 10 to 15 years. So especially for young boys, this can be a huge thing. And it's different from traditional gaming because there's the ability to communicate with other people online, people you don't know, people all over the world, and play with them, which can be really great, especially if you've got, friends in a different country or family in a different country. It can be a really fun way to interact with each other do online gaming together and talk. But, there's also going to be people that you don't know on there. So there are risks that come along with that. So online gaming apps usually have a chat feature, which allows gamers to instant message each other in real time. And while some online gaming platforms have safety and reporting features, many of these don't really restrict what is shared in the chat. And a lot of games can include inappropriate sexual themes and messages and things like over-sexualization of characters and rape and prostitution and things as features of the game. So there's going to be a lot of like kind of adult content there, and it can be easy for savvy teenagers to get around those age restrictions. So that's why it's important to talk to your kid about what kind of games are you playing and like what happens in it and like can you show me what it's like so that you can get an idea of the kind of messages that they're being exposed to. So those are just some of the things to be aware of there. So when it comes to parental controls and online gaming, so most gaming consoles and platforms will have a certain level of parental controls or safety settings that allow you to do things like limit screen time, limit access to certain games based on age ratings, and then I think also just talking to your kid about the kind of games that they're playing, and then you can assess what you think is appropriate or not. Blocking or controlling online interaction. So like hopefully if there's a way that they can, only chat with their friends or not chat with strangers. Set spending limits or block in-game purchases so you don't get a massive bill at the end of the month for all the things your kid was buying online. So when it comes to a lot of online gaming websites, there are restrictions, but they're not always amazing. And this does pose a significant safety risk to young people as they can be very easily accessed and targeted by strangers online. And, many gaming sites don't really have restrictions on what's shared in the chat feature, as we said. So young people can be exposed to just like harassment and name calling. Like there's a lot of trash talking and like mean online culture when it comes to online gaming chats. But they can also be exposed to things like explicit language, harassment, even some cases cyber flashing or cyber bullying. And this can happen even to people that do live stream gaming. This can happen to them too. And many safety and reporting features that are on these online gaming sites, they might only impose like a temporary ban. So this could mean that someone that's like harassing everyone or harassing your young person or even like a potential predator might only be banned for as little as 72 hours. So it's important for you to instill those kind of skills and awareness and safety and protection awareness in your child so that they know they can have strong boundaries online and they can like block people if someone is harassing them and they don't feel like they have to, participate in a group chat where they're just going to get trashed. So things like that. And it's important for them to be able to keep themselves safe online too. So when we're exploring relationships online can create opportunities for young people to gain support, stay connected, avoid isolation. As parents, it's really important to focus on the positives as well as the risks. Sorry, I think Kathy, this was actually your slide and I just started doing it.
Yeah.
Okay. I will pause for a second and then you come in and do this.
Okay. Exploring relationships online can create opportunities for young people to gain support, stay connected, and avoid isolation. As parents, it's important to focus on the positives as well as the risks. It may seem really strange to some adults, but it is totally normal for young people to explore romantic connections online. Since so much of their social life and communication happens through the internet, flirting and exploring their sexuality online and finding out their boundaries comes a little easier than face-to-face interaction. It seems really natural for them. Even if they've met someone in real life first, it's really common that they might expand this relationship online and build it and connect even more deeply online. So, as we said, they might use instant messaging apps, they might use social media, I suppose, to reinforce this connection and to get to know the person better. Exploring sexual feelings online can be normal. It can be part of their development, and young people will use the internet to explore friendships and relationships. Talking to new people online can feel exciting for young people. They can feel that but they can also be contacted by by people who expose a risk to them. It is important to talk to your young person about staying safe online when chatting. Remember, adolescents are more inclined to take risks. So it's a normal part of growing up and it's a natural part of their expression and I suppose their development is to take a risk. So they might be even more likely to take a risk online than they might be in real life. They have the confidence online that they don't have in real life, and I suppose they might be more inclined to take it. It's important to understand this and to talk to your child in a positive way and help them to learn and explore and develop how to be a safe individual online. Young people also tend to look up a lot of stuff about sex online, and sometimes this can come from a curious place, but sometimes it can be that they end up seeing, I suppose, porn or other explicit types of content when they're not trying to. A lot of the time, they might experience their first instant with pornography because someone sends it to them, or they stumble across it even when they're searching something innocent like learn about sex. You can get hits on Google or whatever your search engine is from top porn sites. And then this can lead to young people being curious and clicking into it and then witnessing porn, I suppose, for the first time. What should I be concerned about as a parent? Sorry, one second. My notes skipped from me.
No worries. Go back to the previous one there, Amy. It's literally just one line.
In this, okay. What should I be concerned as a parent? In this section, we're going to look at some of the biggest risks around online safety and well-being, and we're going to discuss them in a way that parents will understand what the risks out there for the young people are and how they can support their young people.
So, intimate image sharing. So, very understandably, a common concern for parents of teenagers in particular is intimate image sharing. So, this is just more commonly known as sending nudes or sharing nudes. So, what exactly is a nude or an intimate image? It seems quite self-explanatory, but we'll go through it anyway. So, intimate images are, photos or videos of things like intimate areas, so genitals, breasts, etc. A naked or pretty scantily clad body. So it could be, selfies in underwear, selfies in bathing suits, something like that. And then alternatively, a person or people engaging in some kind of sexual activity. So this is a very valid concern for parents. One study that we have shows that over a quarter, so 28% of British under 18-year-olds surveyed have had their intimate photos misused or have received an unwanted sexual image. So we're getting young people either having their nudes leaked without their consent or knowledge, or they're being sent unwanted nudes and unwanted sexual images, which is kind of known as cyber flashing. So this is definitely a huge cause of concern for parents, especially parents of teenagers, as smartphones have just become the norm for people to have. So why do young people send nudes in the first place? So young people might share intimate images of themselves for a variety of reasons. So it could be to fit in with their friends that are maybe doing the same thing. It's become somewhat expected and they feel like because all their friends are doing it, that it's something that they should do, even if they're not necessarily comfortable with it. It could just be to explore their sexuality, which is exactly what, is very developmentally regular normal for adolescents. It could be that they're looking for reassurance or validation about their body and their body image from someone that they're attracted to, which is a very natural thing to want. It could be for fun or banter within a peer group. They might just not take it very seriously because it's become so widespread. It could be because that they've been pressured into doing it by another person. So that could be a case of even someone that they fancy has asked to send them nudes and they're not really comfortable with it, but they're worried like, oh, well, they'll find someone else who will send them nudes, so I have to send them nudes to keep them interested in me. Or they might have someone who's like putting a lot of pressure on them to be like, oh, well, this is what couples do. This is what people do when they're in love, and manipulating them and coercing them into sending those images. And it can also be part of a committed and trusting relationship. So there's many, many different reasons why a young person would send them in the first place. So when it comes to intimate image sharing, then while there's all these very valid reasons that a young person would send the more understandable ones, especially if they've been coerced or pressured, there are risks with intimate image sharing. So when it comes to intimate image abuse, so that is what happens when your nude images or videos are shared on without your consent. It's very important to emphasize the blame always lies with the perpetrator. If this ever happens to your child, it is not their fault at all. The fault lies with the person that shared their photos on in the first place. But that being said, it's very, very important to affirm the risks of intimate image sharing with your child. So despite the fact that if their own intimate images are ever used against them, it's not their fault. And we have all those natural reasons, like they're looking for validation from the person they fancy, or they didn't think it was that big deal. So while these things are all very understandable, it's still very important to affirm the risks with your child. So that image might be shared with others without their consent. The biggest risk that there is when it comes to sharing a photo, you don't have full control about where it's going to go. It could be used to blackmail them, especially in the case of sextortion, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, these things can have a huge effect on their mental health and their well-being and their self-esteem, and these can be long-lasting effects that can be quite hard to work through. It could impact their other relationships or future relationships. The images can be shared online or on pornography sites, because a lot of mainstream free porn sites do have like an amateur section where users can just upload content, and it can be very, very difficult to get that content down because those sites are more concerned with their ad revenue and getting clicks than they are victims of intimate image abuse. And all of these things then can impact their future opportunities, career, relationships, university, school, all those kinds of things. So make it very clear to your child that you are there to help them and that if anyone ever shares intimate images of them without their consent, you're not going to be angry at them. You just want to protect them and that they have to tell you because that's such a difficult and lonely thing for a teenager to try and navigate alone. It would be difficult enough for an adult. So make it very clear that you're there to protect them and you're there to help them and that you're not going to punish them and be mad at them. You're their support system if they ever are the victim of intimate image abuse. So, as we said, help your child understand that once an image is shared, whether that's through text or social media or another online platform, it can be difficult and probably impossible to get that image back. And these images leave a digital footprint that can be copied, saved, or spread without their control. So even if it's a case of like a disappearing photo on Snapchat or Instagram or WhatsApp, you know, it's not entirely gone. It might seem like it's gone on your end, but the people that run that app kind of own your image now. Like even though you took the photo, ultimately the owners of that app own that image. So it's kind of always floating around somewhere in cyberspace. So by emphasizing the permanence of digital content, you can help your child make thoughtful, informed decisions about what they share and with whom. And like Kathy said, young people take risks. It's a pretty natural part of adolescence and their development. But what we want them to do is to make the most informed choice that they possibly can while they're exploring their sexuality, while they're exploring relationships, and, really affirm the permanence of some of these choices with them so that they can keep themselves safe and try and avoid as much risk as possible.
When young people have relationships online, whether it be platonic or romantic, technology can unfortunately become a tool of abuse, especially to exert control. This can take place in many shapes or forms, including harassment by phone, so that could be blowing up your phone, spamming you with text, emails, calls, etc. This is harassment. It can also include pressure to be always available or to be active 24/7. Victims may face repercussions if they don't reply instantly. The always on nature of digital technology can give victims less of a chance to escape the abuse. So it's always in their pocket, it's always with them, they have their phone with them, and I suppose that abuse is following them. So whether you're in a safe place or not, I suppose the abuse is there, even if you're not physically with your abusive partner. It could contain threats to share intimate images, videos, or photos. Images may have been originally sent with consent, but the dynamics of the relationship may have changed, and that image is now used as a form of blackmail and to exert control. Actual sharing of intimate images, photos, or videos without permission. Images may be shared in groups, social media apps, or on pornography sites. This is commonly known as revenge porn. It could be controlling behaviors such as tracking and using your location. So, a common tactic by abusers to exert control over their victim is to use spyware and location tracking to monitor them. So, this can be done by using GPS and location trackers built into apps, but abusers can then monitor your location in real time and know where you are. They also can sometimes, in some cases, install a specific spyware app onto your phone. So this is put onto the victim's phone without their knowledge and be used to monitor who they talk to online and other online activities. So it can see who you're contacting. It can mirror in some cases, it can mirror text messages or other images. You can have access to people's photo galleries or like things that are really private. So say such as online banking can also be tracked through spyware on phones, along with knowing where your location is. And some of these spyware apps can look like a normal app that you have on your phone. And I suppose we're all probably culprits of having so many apps on our phones. So it's just if you're finding yourself in this space, and it's just really, I suppose, important to talk to young people about it as well, just to be familiar with the apps that you have on your phone to limit the danger of this. So we're now going to look at online grooming. Online grooming happens when a relationship is built between two people. So it's built a relationship that's built on trust and emotional connection with a child or a young person so that they can manipulate and exploit and abuse them. Young people can be groomed online or in person by a stranger or someone that they know. A groomer can use the same sites, games, online games, and social media apps that young people use. They may pose as a young person so that they gain their trust and that they think they're a peer, and then they can begin the process of grooming.
Kathy, I would say do that slide again because you said it's a relationship between two people, and Shannon might find
Okay,
that too.
perfect. Okay. Online grooming is when someone builds a relationship, trust, and emotional connection with a child or young person so that they can manipulate, exploit, and abuse them. Young people can be groomed online or in person by a stranger or someone they know. A groomer can use the same sites, games, and online gaming, social media apps as young people. They may pose as a young person or appear to gain trust and begin the grooming process. The process of grooming. So it starts with victim selection. So the perpetrator selects the victim. They may find the victim online or in person. They may pose as a young person or use a false alias to gain the young person's trust. Then starts the recruitment phase. So this is the start, I suppose, of the grooming process. The perpetrator may befriend the young person by taking interest in them, complimenting them, giving them presents, and building that connection and relationship with them. So they might find common interests with them, they might share connection with them, and they might then really start, I suppose, to reinforce that they're their friend and that they're someone that they can trust. The exploitation phase then begins. So the perpetrator might isolate the young person from family and friends, which reinforces their dependency on them. So that's a tactic commonly used by groomers. Then they introduce unclear sexual boundaries to introduce into the relationship. So this might be talking about their adult sex life, asking the young person if they've ever done any types of sexual activity. It might be introducing them to porn. And then this is where the control and manipulation begins to test and young persons to ensure compliance. So they get them to do tasks and they see are they compliant with them. Then begins the control. So this is where the abuse and exploitation is occurring. The groomer keeps the young person compliant by controlling them and threatening them and blackmailing them. So this might be where they've sent them on sexually explicit content, or they might tell them that I'm going to threaten to tell your family or friends what you've been doing. They may force the young person to engage in criminal activity or force them to perform sexual acts.
Now, so we're going to look at sextortion, which we briefly spoke about earlier. So sextortion is a type of cyber extortion. So a perpetrator will often pose as a teenager to manipulate a young person into consensually sending them nude photos, which are then used to blackmail the young person. So it could be in exchange for more photos. So like if you don't send me more photos, I'm gonna post these images everywhere, or it could be into sending them money. So it's like, if you don't want these photos posted everywhere, send me 2 grand or something like that. So the perpetrator will threaten to share the photos with family and friends, or might threaten to do that, preying on a young person's shame and embarrassment. And it isn't always one perpetrator acting alone. It can be an organized criminal enterprise run by things called comm groups, just like any other online scam. So there isn't always that sexual element or that grooming element that Kathy spoke about. And data from the Internet Watchdog Foundation shows that older teenagers, those aged 14 to 17-year-old, are kind of most at risk for sextortion. And I think it does, when we think about how they're preying on a young person's shame and embarrassment, they're picking slightly older teenagers who are maybe a little bit more along and they're kind of developing their sense of their sexuality and exploring things like this. So, they're preying on them at that young age where they can be kind of manipulated into sending images or sending nudes or something like that, but then can then be very much targeted for blackmail and risk. So it's quite a vulnerable age for this kind of thing. And unfortunately, we know from data that the online abuse of children is just continuing to grow, and there's been a real stark rise in the amount of child sexual abuse material that is online. So the Internet Watchdog Foundation statistics show that in 2023, there was a 360% increase in self-generated sexual imagery of 7 to 10-year-olds from 2020 to 2022, which is just the most horrifying thing you could ever think of. And reports show that the majority of these images were self-generated, so 92%. And in 2023, there was 275,652 images showing child sexual abuse in 2023, with the majority of those being self-generated, which means that the young person or the child was manipulated or coerced into taking that photo of themselves and then sharing it with someone else online. And in the first 6 months of 2023, the Internet Watchdog Foundation received more reports involving sextortion than the whole of 2022. So that's quite harrowing. It is also important to keep in mind that, sextortion has become more of a talking point in the media. There's been more awareness raising articles about it. So it's also possible that, the reason that we have more reports is because more young people are coming forward to seek out support services, reporting it to police, which is wonderful. We want to see more of that, but it's more than likely it's a combination of both, where more young people are being targeted, but more young people are coming forward as well.
So, what are the laws that we have in Ireland to prevent young people from coming to harm? So, in Ireland, we're lucky that we have three or four different laws that really, I suppose, protect our young people from this type of abuse. So, we have COCO's law. So, under COCO's law, also known as the Harassment, Harmful Communications and Related Offences Act, it is a criminal offence to distribute or publish intimate images or videos of someone without their consent, even if you did not intend to cause harm to the person. It is also illegal to threaten to distribute or publish images, videos of someone, even if you have no intent to follow through on the threat. The other relevant laws. So, in essence, Irish society prohibits the production, possession of intimate images and distribution to minors. So, that is done through the Child Trafficking and Pornography Act of 1998. So, under this act, it's an offence to make, possess, or distribute child pornography. This includes images or photos of videos. Sorry, I'm going to start that one again.
Well,
other relevant legislation, Child Trafficking Act 1998. Under this act, it is an offence to make, possess, or distribute child pornography. This includes images and videos of individuals under the age of 18 engaged in sexually explicit activities. This applies even if the images are created consensually by a minor. So if the young person creates this image and sends it on to someone else, they have it on their phone. That can actually be deemed legally as child pornography. The Protection of Children Online Safety Act 2020. So this act was introduced, I suppose, to reinforce laws around this digital age that we're living in. So this legislation focuses on protecting young people online and addressing harmful content, including the sharing of image and sexualization of images of minors. Pornography. In this section, we're going to look at the common concerns around pornography. So it's really common for a parent, I suppose, to feel uncomfortable about the content that their child may be looking at online. So we're going to have an in-depth look at it now. As parents, it's understandable to feel concerned about the content that your child might come across online. Undoubtedly, even with the best intentions, boundaries, rules, children may accidentally stumble across or be sent inappropriate materials, which sometimes they didn't go looking for. The junior cycle SPHE curriculum introduces age appropriate, value based education around pornography and will be introduced in senior cycle by 2027 when the mandatory SPHE classes begin. It's important to understand that the exposure to pornography at a young age can be confusing and upsetting for young people. It may shape unrealistic expectations about relationships, sex, and body image, and children might not always feel comfortable bringing it up unless they know it comes from that the conversation is going to be held in a safe place and without judgment. The objective of these classes is not to teach young people that pornography is a reliable source for learning about sex. The curriculum encourages young people to critically examine the effects of pornography, including unrealistic body standards, distorting expectations for sex, unhealthy sexual dynamics, potential for addiction, exploitation, and misogynistic attitudes. No sexually explicit content is shown in classes, so don't worry that your child is going to be shown porn or shown a sexualized image. Teachers are explicitly prohibited from showing pornography in these lessons. So I suppose what can parents do? So parents do, like I suppose you can introduce your parental controls. As we've said a few times already, they're not foolproof, but they can be helpful tools. So our role goes beyond, I suppose, tech solutions. It's about creating an environment at home where the children feel open to be able to talk about what they see online. So if they see something that makes them feel really uncomfortable, it's that they can come and talk to you about it. You can ask open questions and stay curious rather than critical with their children and help them to have a sense of the digital world that they're growing up in. It's really, really important, I suppose, to encourage critical thinking and media literacy. So, no, just reinforcing that not everything that they see online is real life, and not everything that they see, I suppose, even in films and series, these unrealistic relationship expectations, or that these it's so common, to I suppose have one night stands or whatever it is. These are not maybe realistic relationship expectations that happen in real life. Most importantly, they can reinforce that they can always come to you no matter what they've seen or experienced. So that's by setting clear, age appropriate expectations for online internet use and having that open conversation in your home. So you're really reinforcing that no matter what they've seen online, that they can come to you and that they won't face judgment.
Now we're going to explore a little bit of online misogyny, which has become a huge talking point, I think, especially if you were one of the many people that watched the Netflix series Adolescence, something that started out as quite fringe, but now has spilled into the mainstream. So we're going to cover that in this section now. So in recent years, we've seen a huge rise in extremist and in particularly misogynistic content and messaging online. So it's something that would have started out quite fringe, started out on like Reddit forums and 4chan and places like that, but it has now become very, very mainstream. And you're seeing this kind of content, this kind of rhetoric and messaging on YouTube, TikTok, gaming chats, social media in general. So this kind of collection of online spaces or on like online media that's promoting it's kind of misogynistic and extremist messaging is kind of often referred to as the manosphere. So a collection of websites, online media that promotes traditional masculinity, misogyny, and opposition to feminism. So it's no longer in the kind of fringe subreddits and online forums. It's in podcasts, it's in TikTok, it's on YouTube Shorts, it's kind of everywhere. So this content doesn't always look extreme at first. It can come in the form of like humor and memes or influencers or podcasters using quite coded language. And one thing that we'll talk about in a bit is looks maxing. So a lot of manosphere content around looks maxing can seem like harmless advice for your general well-being and looking after yourself and presenting yourself well. But underneath the message is often that women are often devalued, dehumanized, or blamed for young men's problems, and that men are entitled to sex or relationships. And a lot of it is also encouraging a lot of harmful and old-fashioned gender roles and gender stereotypes about like how you have to look very masculine to get a girlfriend or to be a man of high value. So starts out seeming quite harmless, but whenever you dig beneath the surface, you realize there's a lot of quite harmful messaging in there. So one particularly harmful area is the incel community. So incel is short for involuntarily celibate, and that's when someone, usually a boy or a man, who feels that they cannot find a romantic or sexual partner despite wanting one and also feeling like they are owed one because, you know, all of our media and all of our films and TV and songs and all of these things, they do really reinforce the guy gets the girl in the end. So, young men are kind of raised or socialized with the expectation that they are owed a sexual partner or a romantic partner. And when that doesn't happen, they can feel quite cheated or feel quite hard done by. And in the incel community, this is where like young men come and gather to express frustration and then often end up blaming women for their lack of romantic or sexual experiences instead of looking inward about maybe like, oh, well, what do I bring to my relationships? Would I make a good boyfriend? How can I, become a better person to be in a relationship with? It's very much about putting that frustration and blame elsewhere. And research shows that teenage boys are targeted online by manosphere content, including memes, podcast videos, or influencer content. So just by virtue of being a young person with a male gendered profile on a social media app, you're going to be shared manosphere content, harmful, kind of more extremist messaging, or an online misogyny, also a lot of sexual content purely by being a boy online. So it's very hard to escape this kind of messaging. And when you're a young teenager, you don't, you're not always necessarily critically thinking when you just want to have a brainless scroll. So they're not always fully aware of how some of this messaging is seeping into their values and beliefs without them critically thinking about it. So when we're talking about online misogyny, it's important to kind of define misogyny in the first place. So misogyny is a word that just means a hatred, a dislike, or deep disrespect towards women. So it can be, that hatred and disrespect, or it could also just mean believing in like old-fashioned gender roles that restrict women, like women should stay at home and focus on their roles as mothers and wives, like women don't make good leaders, like women shouldn't um they shouldn't be in the corporate workplace, things like that. So it can show up in lots of different ways. It can be through making sexist jokes or comments. It can be believing that women are less important, less smart, or less capable than men. Controlling or harming women in relationships, which is honestly one of the biggest places that we see it. Not taking women's ideas, voices, experiences, or rights seriously. Spreading harmful stereotypes about girls and women. And then on the really horrible end of it, believing that women lie about experiencing sexual and domestic violence. And these are all things that are really, all types of messages that are really pushed forward by these manosphere creators and manosphere influencers, and especially in the incel community. A lot of misogyny and a lot of myths that we're going to look at in a minute. So in incel spaces, as we said, young men are really encouraged to blame women or blame society for their lack of romantic success, instead of looking at personal growth or their own flaws or their own things that they could maybe improve on, or healthy communication or self-care. And, it's much easier to place that blame elsewhere instead of reflecting on what they offer in relationships, or maybe what their shortcomings might be, or places that they could work on themselves. Incel online spaces promote misogyny, toxic masculinity, dangerous beliefs, and even violence against women through harmful messages. Things like women are only attracted to alpha males, and we'll go into detail about what an alpha male is in a minute. That women are vain and we only care about looks and status and power and money, and we don't care about, a nice guy or humor or personality, things like that. Quote unquote, real men don't show emotion or talk about feelings other than anger, of course. Anger is always acceptable. Feminism is to blame for men being single or unable to find a partner. So the fact that women have more rights and more allowances in society today, that's the real villain here, and not violence against women and male violence against women. So that's another huge myth that's perpetuated by the incel community. And then on the really horrible end of the spectrum, with all of these things in mind, that rape or sexual assault is a justified punishment for women not finding incels attractive, or, being selective about the kind of partners that they want. So in the incel community, it's pretty normalized to think that a woman deserves to be raped because she didn't pick you in the first place. So why it matters. Adolescence is a critical time for developing self-esteem, core beliefs, and values. And online manosphere creators prey on young men's insecurities and worries to instill harmful misogynistic beliefs. So as we spoke about, young men don't always have the critical thinking skills to be able to see the underlying message of some of this content that they're consuming. So they might think it's fine at first, and it can be that case of, a frog in slowly boiling water doesn't always realize, what they're being indoctrinated into. And when they're exposed to this type of content regularly, it can really shape how they view women, leading to like resentment, very rigid gender expectations, or even support for violence. And it can also prevent them from developing meaningful relationships. And that's not just romantic relationships or sexual relationships as they get older. It's also just the relationships they have with their mothers, their sisters, their family, their friends, things like that. This affects all the women in their lives, not just potential romantic partners. So now we're going to do a little whistle stop tour of some of the incel and online manosphere terms and terminology and words that they use. So an alpha male, as we spoke about previously, is a strong, assertive man who maintains control. Alphas are in charge, they have their pick of sexual partners, and they do not show emotions other than anger. A beta, on the other hand, is a man who's perceived as less assertive, dominant, or successful than an alpha male. And it can be used to kind of describe any man that is kind or patient or easygoing, not aggressive, not super macho. And then these character traits, which are quite nice, are then kind of used against them to insult them and to undermine their masculinity and say they're not as masculine as the super macho angry guy. A beta orbiter then is a beta male who invests time and effort into spending time with women in the hope of getting into a romantic relationship or having sex with them. A sigma, so this term describes a solitary masculine man who is equivalent to an alpha male in his power and status, but is a quote unquote lone wolf who disregards the alpha beta hierarchy. And in the manosphere, a sigma is considered the rarest kind of man. So I find it quite funny that in manosphere and incel spaces, they've built this entire hierarchy around, what man is the most masculine and alphas and betas and all that. But then the person that's at the top of their totem pole is someone who completely disregards this entire hierarchy. So it seems quite hypocritical, but listen, I feel like logic is not the main thing here. A simp is a man who shows excessive attention towards a woman in pursuit of affection or a sexual relationship. And typically this might be used in the case of, the woman doesn't reciprocate their romantic feelings. So they're kind of chasing after someone who's not interested in them and, doing lots of favors and being nice to them in the hopes that they can get out of, the friend zone or whatever it is. So sometimes this term, as well as beta, it's just used to describe any man who's maybe kind or thoughtful towards women. And it's that way of it's very funny in that, the main goal for incels, or even young boys in this kind of manosphere space is to often like get a romantic partner or get a girlfriend. But when they see men who are kind and thoughtful towards women or have patience for them or like friends with women, they're getting thrown insults like beta and simp. So it's a very double-edged sword type of thing where they're the very thing that they want, they're kind of working actively against. It's very strange that way. So a couple more. So a Chad is an archetypal alpha male that is tall, masculine, popular with women. And you might use it in a way of like, oh, that guy's such a Chad. So he's kind of both an aspirational figure and also a derogatory term because, you want to be the Chad, you want to be the super macho guy who's got loads of girls going after him, but also it's derogatory in that he doesn't understand the incel struggle and he's just some basic guy. So it's kind of two sides of the one coin. A Stacey then is a woman who's hyper feminine, attractive, and unattainable to an incel and only dates Chads. And then a Becky, on the other hand, is an average young woman. She's not as hot as Stacey. She's less attractive, but she's still unlikely to give the incel a chance, which is kind of that leveling that thing against women of like, oh, even the more average women like won't date us. They're that shallow and vain. That's the kind of rhetoric you're getting. And you'll see a lot of these are very American names because a lot of this kind of subculture would have kind of started in America or on American forums and places, and then it's kind of really spread globally, and now it's a all over the world thing, universal thing. Femoid and foid, I think is particularly gross. So it's a derogatory word for woman, and it's short for like female humanoid. And I think another big red flag is that if you hear your son or a nephew or just a young man in your life just referring to women as females, it's just quite dehumanizing and derogatory instead of just, referring them to women and girls and people that they are. And so then if someone's red pilled, so that is someone who's awoken to the incel ideology. You might be vaguely familiar with that term because it comes from the Matrix movies, where characters take the red pill to see reality as it truly is. So incels believe that they've been red pilled and that they have been awoken to the structure of society that is stopping them from having a romantic partner. And then if you're blue pilled, so you might call them a normie, is someone who doesn't believe in incel ideology. So this is what you might call me and Kathy, proud blue pilled normies. We believe that gender inequality is real. We recognize rape culture and the prevalence of violence against women. And then if you're black pilled, you're kind of on the very end of the spectrum. That's someone who's entirely lost hope of developing a romantic relationship, regardless of any changes they might make to their physical appearance, personality, or other attributes. They just think that they're a completely hopeless case, which, to be honest, is quite a dangerous space to be in, because this is where we look into, this is where like extremist things can happen. And there's been many cases where young men have really acted out in sometimes quite violent ways because they have just felt so hopeless about ever getting a romantic partner or sexual partner. And the last few, so we briefly spoke about looks maxing earlier. So this is just a term that's been created that's just like looking after yourself, improving your physical appearance to become more of an alpha or more of a Chad. So, as we said, this can seem relatively harmless, and a lot of the advice is actually just healthy self-care. It's kind of funny that we've had to come up with this, looks maxing term for it. And that could just be through improved diet, hygiene, and exercise, and, caring about how you present yourself. But the underlying message, unfortunately, for a lot of this is that, if you're looks maxing, you're going to find a high value woman. And it's that idea of, self-improvement, but it's all about status and hierarchies again. And, by getting a high value woman is that, you don't want the low value woman. So there's always that element of devaluing women in this process. And also a lot of more extreme looks maxing tips and advice includes things like taking steroids, disordered eating, over exercising, and also something called bone smashing. So bone smash theory is the idea that repeatedly smashing or breaking bones in your face can lead to bone growth, and then that leads to a more masculine appearance. So a lot of looks maxing is very focused on getting a bigger jaw and a big masculine jaw. So it could be through something as extreme as bone smashing, or through like mewing, which is where you like put your tongue to the roof of your mouth to make everything seem a bit slimmer, so you don't kind of, your face just seems a bit more snatched. But also there's these like weird little toys that they can get to do like jaw exercises to just make their jaw look bigger and to increase these muscles so it looks more masculine. So lots of just weird little hacks and tips to try and get a really masculine looking face. And it's very funny because often you see cases where young men have done this and they think it's working, but they're really just going through puberty. So this would have been a natural process for them anyway, but they attribute a lot of this more masculinization of their face to doing this kind of looks maxing stuff when really they're just getting older and puberty is just doing its thing. So then we've got AWALT, which stands for All Women Are Like That. So this is something that you might see in a comment section or on a forum. Someone's given out about a woman or a girl, and then someone else might comment, All women are like that. And that's just to imply that all women are driven by the same shallow beliefs and values, and they can paint us all with the same broad stroke. And then low T or high T, that simply just means low testosterone or high testosterone. So you might call someone a low T beta to just really try and undercut their masculinity. And a lot of it is just, once again, based on those kind of quite actually false and debunked ideas around like social hierarchies and alpha males and testosterone, and a lot of this kind of almost eugenics type messaging around the strongest man and the leader of the pack and that kind of thing. So that's just a whistle stop tour of some of the most common and kind of weird words or terminology for you to look out for if your young man is saying it. And as we said, a lot of this is spilling into mainstream language and terminology, so much so that so many young people are using these terms and they don't really know where they're coming from. But if you do hear any of these terms off a young man in your life or a teenage boy, it's something to keep your eye on and to pay attention to. So how can you help then? So as parents, you have a really powerful role to play. You don't need to know all the latest online trends, but by staying involved and asking questions and modeling respectful relationships at home, you can make a huge difference. So things like talking openly about respect and empathy and healthy relationships, especially about women and girls and the women in your life. Challenging harmful language or attitudes gently but clearly. So if you hear them saying any of those kind of words or terms that we just talked about, just by maybe coming to them with curiosity, not judgment, as Kathy said earlier, but just saying like, oh, well, like, what does that mean? And ask them to explain it and be like, oh, do you really think that? And be like, well, what about your friend Sarah or like your auntie? Do you think that that applies to her, that all women are like that, vain and shallow? Trying to gently poke holes in that logic without them feeling like they're being attacked is a very good method. Encouraging emotional expression and helping boys resist those rigid gender roles. Just knowing that they can cry, they can be anxious, they can be worried, they can be scared. They don't need to be a stoic, strong man who never shows his emotions or never shows anxiety. It's very important that, in your home, it's a safe place to do those things. And if there are people in your life who really uphold those rigid gender roles, about just poking those little holes again of like, oh, have you ever noticed that, your uncle does a lot of this? Like, I don't think that's very good for him or something like that. So kind of getting them to think critically about how these rigid gender roles are affecting other people in their lives and saying like, oh, it's, the grass isn't actually that green over there. Encouraging boys to have female friends and a more diverse friend group. The more diverse friend group that they can have, the better. The more genders, the more sexualities, the more races, the more cultural backgrounds they can be friends with. It's only going to help them. It's only going to benefit them. And it's going to help them see, like, women and girls as fully formed people and not these shallow archetypes that the internet is trying to get them to think that we are. And then just staying engaged with what your child is viewing online. So just asking them, like, oh, did you see anything funny on like TikTok recently? I saw this funny video, and trying to kind of open the conversation about, what do you see online? Do you ever see something like weird? Like, what do you do about it? Like, do you report it? Do you just scroll past? Kind of trying to open the door into that conversation about thinking critically about the kind of content that we're seeing.
So, with all the information that we've given you there, you're probably wondering, how can I even start a conversation with my child about the online harm that they're seeing? So, it's really, I suppose, important to make these conversations about your child's online world part of normal everyday life. So just mirroring what Alex said there. Ask them what they're doing online, what apps they use, and like even get them to show them how certain platforms work. Not only will this help you stay informed, but also show you what they're interested in, not just concerned. I suppose it's really important to remember that young people's algorithm on apps look a lot different to the content that you might be interpreting or that you might be seeing. So the algorithms, I suppose, are really targeted towards these young people. So just really important to remember that when you're thinking about what they're viewing, it's different content than you might be interpreting on the same apps. So by building regular open dialogue, it becomes easier to speak to them if something feels wrong, confusing, or uncomfortable. From there, you can gently introduce conversations about potential online dangers, harmful content, inappropriate messages, and pressure to share personal information in a way that feels really supportive and coming from a supportive place rather than from a scary place or a scaremongering space. It's more than normal to talk about their digital life so that they feel that they can ask for help if they need it. So, as we said earlier, if they see something that they feel uncomfortable about, that they can come and say it to you. But also, if they young people might not always recognize abuse online. So they're so exposed to the online world 24/7. Sometimes it's important to talk about how language, messages, and content and make them feel uncomfortable or safe. Harmful content can often be normalized, making it harder for it to spot an impact. So we often see, like in comment sections, people might use really degrading or derogatory terms towards people, and this can become, I suppose, commonplace online. And young people mightn't realize that this is actually online sexual harm. Parents can help their children understand online dangers, encourage them to speak up if something feels wrong. So by setting clear boundaries about who to connect with, what content they're engaging in, and how much time to spend online, reminding them that respect and personal boundaries matter as much online as they do in person. So I suppose it's around that piece. We really feel comfortable having conversations with our children about like how they should be mannerful and how they should engage with a person face to face. But it's about reminding them that they have to bring them attributes onto their online spaces as well. I want to talk to my child about the risks of the internet, and I'm worried about how they're too young. When should I start? It's normal to be nervous about having a conversation about online harm with your young child, as children are often exposed to the online world from a very young age. So through any app or device they're using, they're using different forms of technology from a really young age. It's a good idea to introduce these conversations as early as possible using age appropriate means. You don't have to have one big talk. You can sprinkle it across loads of small little conversations in time. So bring up the conversations naturally, keep your tone calm and curious, and make sure that your child feels safe coming to you. So you have this openness around it so that your child can come to you if they see something that troubles them. Start with the basics. Introduce the online world, explaining what the internet is and how it works. By explaining the vastness and complexities of the internet, you're creating a foundation to build further conversations around internet safety and show them how to stay safe online. It is important that your child recognizes that traits such as kindness, respect, and consent apply not only in real life situations, but also in the online world. So, just mirroring what we said there before, it's really important that they know you should be respectful online as you are in person. It's important that children um, have these conversations and that these spaces are created for these conversations to be an ongoing piece of their development. I've never spoken to my teenager about online sexual harm. Is it too late? So it's never too late to start a conversation. You can start with a gentle chat around the concerns about the online world. Starting the conversation with your teenager might feel challenging, especially if you haven't discussed it before. However, beginning with a gentle conversation starter can help you ease into the dialogue, explain why your concerns are about the online world, and ask them, I suppose, what spaces they're using the online world in. So you can relate it to the discussion to your teenager. So if they're really into chatting with friends or online gaming, you can tailor the conversation to what their primary use of the online world is. Some young people might be really into a certain app where you share photos on, I suppose, or another young person might never put up anything on social media, but might be really into gaming. So it's just around tailoring that conversation to what your young person's interests are, and that'll make it easier to have a conversation. Remember, the aim is to have an ongoing conversation. By starting this dialogue, you can help your teen to develop essential skills to navigate the online world and have healthy relationships.
So, how do you start that conversation then? So, it can be difficult to start the conversation if you've never done it before, but it's not impossible. And, better late than never, as Kathy said. So, we've got a couple of ideas of conversation starters here. So, as we said, don't worry about it being one big talk. It might be better to approach it and just a little bit more manageable for you both through a lot of small chats and a lot of small conversations, which will also help you get better at it the more you practice it. So, if you know that they're doing a lot of online gaming, you could say, oh, I know that online gaming has a lot of, trash talk and people saying really mean things to each other. When you're gaming with people, does anyone ever say anything weird to you? And like, how do you handle that? Do you brush it off? Do you report it? Do you block people? Like, what do you do? And like, how do you look after yourself when you're in those spaces? Do you know where to go for help and where to find safety tools on your favorite apps and games if you do need them? If someone is harassing you a lot or trying to contact you or like, asking you for things you don't want to do, like, do you know how to block them? And you could say, oh, I saw this online article today about sextortion and I was so shocked. I couldn't believe how common it's become. Did you know how common it is? Like, is this something any of your friends have ever been up against? You could say, oh, I just saw something online that made me feel so weird. Do you ever see anything weird online that makes you feel uncomfortable? Like, how do you handle it? So by talking about your own experiences, especially for seeing like kind of weird content online, which like we all see weird stuff when we're scrolling online. So I think that'll kind of help your young person feel less kind of scrutinized and like you're trying to suss them out and more that you're sharing an experience and that you're asking them to share one too. So by also being like, I see weird stuff online too, it's going to let them feel a little bit less, attacked maybe. And you could say, what would you do if you were asked for information that you didn't think was safe to share? Like, what if someone was asking you for, details about your school or your family or where you live? Like how would you feel about sharing that? What would you do if someone online ever asked you for pictures? Have you ever heard of Coco's Law? So especially with that intimate image stuff, often this stuff is in the news as well, or it's on radio shows or things like that, or often there'll be cases where you can kind of use a radio segment when you're, driving to school in the morning, or something on the news if you're watching TV at night. You can use these things as a jumping off point. So if it feels too weird to just naturally open the door and ask them this random question out of the blue, when you see these opportunities, like jump on them. Say like, oh my God, that's wild. Like, I can't believe this is happening to so many young people. Like, has this ever happened to anyone you know? Or like, what do you think about that? How do you think that young person felt? So using those examples that are kind of naturally rising in the media or the news or on TV, or if you see, a case of intimate image abuse in like a TV show or something like that. So using those examples in the media, it kind of helps externalize it so that your young person doesn't really feel like they're being interrogated about their life. It can be help to, externalize the issue and talk about it in third person. So that can also be really helpful. So before we finish, we'll just do a quick summary of some of our top tips for supporting your children to stay safe online. So, the main message really here is to have those conversations with them and don't shy away from them. Even if they feel weird and awkward at the beginning, it's so much better that you have them. And the better that you get, the more you do them, the better you're going to get. So have the conversations that enable them to form the skills that they need to recognize online sexual harm. And just knowing things that like, not everyone is who they say they is. How do you know that that profile that you're accepting or talking to, like, how do we know it's any good? How do we know that they're a real person? Do they have a lot of friends? How active? How many years have they been posting photos? Things like this. We want to develop our critical thinking skills. Install your parental controls on devices and use the parental controls that exist, but just always remember that these alone cannot keep your child safe, which is why we're trying to develop their own online safety skills, and which is why those conversations are so important. Discuss the importance of being respectful to other people online so that they're not harassing people online, they're not bullying people online, and they're not being, the problem online. Our behavior online should reflect our behavior in real life, and we should always treat people with respect and kindness and empathy, no matter, whether we're on Instagram or we're in school. It's the exact same premise, the same rules. Talk about what to do if they are asked to send, if someone does ask them for a nude image or someone else has sent them one. And remember to just really instill that they can always come and talk to you and they should talk to you about this and that, you're not going to be mad at them, that you're not going to punish them, you're there to help them. And if they know that you're always that safe space to land, they're going to feel a lot less scared about coming to you if they do have a problem like this. And, just really remember to discuss with your child that once an image is sent, they don't have any control over what happens in that image. So it's really important to always be aware of the risks of what they're doing. And even though young people can, disregard the risks a lot, we're trying to get them to really appreciate the risks of sending nudes, online interactions, having relationships online. There are risks that come with it, and young people need to be aware of those. And also help your child understand, the consequences that they could face for sending or sharing nudes. Make sure that they understand that taking or possessing sexual images, especially, under the age of 18, like is technically a criminal offense. And while those laws do exist to protect them, they're not to criminalize them. It's important that they recognize that it's a very serious thing. And it can also result in sanctions in schools, like things like being expelled or suspended, things like that. Children might not always understand how harmful sharing intimate images of other people can be. They can be quite flippant about it. So explain that, say some kid in their class or in their school is having their nude images sent around, that it's not funny, it's not a joke. They don't deserve it because they shouldn't have sent the photos in the first place. It's a huge violation of their trust. It can really harm the other person and their well-being. So we take that very seriously. Also keep in mind that, when they are talking to people online, that not everyone they meet online is who they say they are. It's very, very easy to create a fake profile online. It's very easy to create a fake personality online. They should only interact with people that they know and trust. And, Irish teens have become victims of webcam blackmail and sextortion that we spoke about earlier. And it's very important that that's something that they keep in mind. So not only should they only speak to people that they know and trust, but if they are speaking to strangers and they suddenly start asking them for nudes, that's a huge red flag. We do not do that. And, when you're talking about all these different things around online safety with your kid, you could rehearse different scenarios with them to help them be comfortable with saying no, because peer pressure can play a really huge part in why teenagers maybe act and behave in certain ways, and maybe they're sending nudes because they think that they should, or they're going along with things that they're not comfortable with, but they think that's what everyone else is doing, and I don't want to be the black sheep. I don't want to be the one to speak out. So by rehearsing maybe different scenarios to help them get comfortable with saying no, this is going to give them the skills to be ready for a real life situation where they have to say no to somebody. So let them know to be firm with their boundaries, and also that they should expect to have their boundaries respected, that if they say no, that shouldn't be pushed. And I know a lot of people might think, well, my teenager says no enough. I don't want them to say no more. But to be honest, if your teenager says no to you a lot and can sometimes be a bit defiant, to be honest, it's a bit of a green flag. It's much better than like maybe a teenager who's kind of maybe through peer pressure, maybe doing a lot of people pleasing and going along with things that they're not really comfortable with because they don't have the self-confidence or assurance in themselves to say no to things that they're not comfortable with. So if your teenager is very comfortable with the word no, you're already starting on a strong foot. So really run with that and instill that confidence and that autonomy in them.
Okay, so I suppose what supports are out there for parents in relation to supporting and reporting your child if they are a victim of online harm? So Hotline.ie is the main national centre for combating illegal content online. So it's a national service. You can securely and anonymously report suspected illegal content such as child sexual abuse material or intimate image abuse on Hotline.ie. So it's quite easy to use. It's really user friendly. It could be something that even if you're not, you know, reporting it at the moment that you just make yourself familiar with if you have to use it in the future. So the Gardaí, so you can report incidents of online sexual harm to the Gardaí at any time. So you can do that in your local Garda station, or you can do it on the Garda 24-hour free helpline, which is available there. So you can use that for reporting child sexual abuse online. So, how can you support your child with everything we've looked at here? So, I suppose by building your information base and knowing what services are out there and how to, suppose, expand your knowledge about online harm more than you've learned on this webinar, you can use webwise.ie. So, Webwise is the Irish Internet Safety Awareness Centre. They aim to educate and empower children, teenagers, and families and educators to navigate the online world safely and responsibly. So, they've really good resources, advice, and educational initiatives such as videos, worksheets, etc., and loads of different information that is made in a really, really good and tailored way to your needs. So they address various type online safety concerns. And lastly, we have supporting. So we have the National Parents Council. It's a confidential service and is available Monday to Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Their details are there on screen, so they are able to offer advice and support to parents. We also have the ISBCC support line. This helps provide support and information to parents and carers concerned about their child's online safety and other issues. So their details are there on screen as well. That brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you stayed to the end, thanks for taking on such an amazing amount of information. And we hope that it is helpful to you to have these conversations with your child around online safety and harm. If you require any further information, please reach out to us on our email address, which is there, consented@grcc.ie. And our social media handles are also there if you want to give us a follow. From Alex and myself, thanks so much.